Have you been completely lost in Lightfall with the new mod 3.0 armor 3.0 system? Well, I'm here to help you out. What's going on, guys? Bolts here, back with another video. Today we're going to be doing a build video for all three of the classes to give you the best advantage in high-end PvE content, solo lost sectors, getting ready for GMs, or higher end nightfalls, but especially the day one raid coming up this Friday. Before we get into the builds, I just briefly want to explain how the mod 3.0 armor 3.0 system works in case you didn't know. It's all based around orbs of power, so picking up orbs of power will give you something called an armor charge, and you can create orbs of power in many different ways. I'm just going to use this as an example. A siphon mod, so rapid void weapon final blows and strand weapon final blows will create an orb of power. Pick those up, get an armor charge. Now these yellow mods are your instant return consume armor charge mods. So these will instantly take away your armor charge but give you something in return. So grenade kickstart, for example, when my grenade energy is fully expended, so I throw a grenade, it's completely expended. If I have armor charges, it will instantly give me grenade energy back. It's essentially what the yellow mods do. The green mods are sort of bank mods, I like to call them. So for charged up, it increases the number of stacks of armor charge that you can carry. So instead of the default, you get +1, and these do stack. The only other thing is these basically sort of buff your armor charges, whether it be for you or your allies. So that's why I like to call it the bank, because it usually increases the amount of armor charges you can carry. There is one exception, and that is time dilation. That basically just increases the time of the decay mods, which are these blue mods here. So this blue mod, for example, Stasis Weapon Surge, is essentially the old Font of Might. So my stasis weapons will gain a bonus to damage while you have an armor charge. So the armor charge will decay over time, which means it'll tick down from, I believe the default is 10 seconds. So during those 10 seconds, I will have increased damage with stasis weapons. Now the time dilation, as I mentioned, you can stack those and it'll increase that timer so you can do more damage over time. That's essentially what the three new mods are and what the colors and what they mean. I hope that was helpful. Now let's get into the builds. All right, first up, we are here on our Warlock, and this will be our Solar Starfire Protocol build. It will mainly be our main build that we should use on Warlock in terms of hard content and day one raid. The grenade spam is just way too good. These are going to be the fragments and aspects and stuff I'm using. Obviously, Empowering Rift and Fusion Nades, Aspects, Icarus Dash, and Touch of Flame. The new Ember of Resolve, where Solar Grenade Final Blows will cure you. So not only will you be nuking the entire world, but you will also be healing yourself or curing yourself upon Grenade Final Blows. And you will have a lot of grenades. Ember of Char, to have our Solar Ignitions spread Scorch to affected targets. Ember of Mercy, when we revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain restoration, and also picking up a Fire Sprite grants restoration just for some survivability, paired with the cure from our Grenade Final Blows. And Ember of Eruption, which your Solar Ignitions have increased area of effect. Now, I'm just going to show you a picture of the mods in case you don't want to hear me ramble on and on and on. So feel free to take a screenshot of this. But basically, we are going to be using double ashes to assets, which allows us to gain super energy on grenade kills. And obviously, since we will be non-stop spamming grenades, we will get our Well of Radiance back very quickly. We're using Void/Strand dual siphon because Strand weapons will be very good if you get a hatchling roll on it, and with the artifact mod that grants volatile rounds, volatile flow, picking up an overpower grants you your void weapons volatile rounds. I like to use the funnel web for that, so that is why I will be using the void and strand siphon. For the gauntlets, we're going to be using double firepower. So our grenade energy, when it's fully expended, we will gain grenade energy and it will consume an armor charge. So we're going to be using 2 of those, as well as the firepower. So our grenade final blows create orbs of power. So basically, we'll just be non-stop having nades, as you guys know, and our grenade final blows will also create orbs, which will give us armor charge. We're going to be using charged up on our chest plate, which increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1. So it'll basically just give us more armor charges to synergize with our build. I don't have any mods here. Feel free to use any reserve mods or resist mods. The only reason I didn't put any here is because I'd rather just slot the resist mods in the activity, because they obviously change, whether it be arc, solar, strand, whatever. Plus they're kind of bugged right now, if you didn't know. Every time you die, you basically have to reslot them, so I just don't really have them on. For our boots, we are going to be using a Void Weapon Surge, so we can do more damage with our Funnel Web. So collecting an Orb of Power causes you to gain 1 temporary armor charge, and then your Void Weapons gain a small bonus to damage. I'll also be using Stasis Weapon Surge. This is because I am using the Bump in the Night Rocket with Demolitionist. This will be basically my boss damage build. Stick them with Wither Horde and shoot them a little bit with Funnel Web if I need to, but grenade should come up very quickly with the grenade kickstarts. And then the Demolitionist, which using my grenade will reload my rocket, so that is why I'm using the Stasis Weapon Surge for my rocket to do more damage. On our class item, we basically just have 3 bombers. So reduces grenade cooldown when using your class ability. You don't really need that on this build. You can use other things like distribution or Reaper when that is not disabled. Maybe even time dilation, so your decaying armor charges have a longer duration. And the things that decay the armor charges are the blue ones. So things like Stasis, the Stasis Weapon Surge or Weapon Surge mods, it will decay over time once you use it. So I believe the default is 10 seconds. So if you put a time dilation mod on, you will have, I believe, one time dilation mod is 15 seconds. So basically you'll have 15 seconds of whatever weapon surge you're using, which will allow you to do more damage. All right, the second build we will look into on Warlock. It's been a build for a while, just as a Starfire Protocol one, but it will be the Controverse Hold, Voidwalker, spamming our Vortex Grenades. So we're using Healing Rift and Vortex Grenades. The aspects we'll be using are Chaos Accelerant and Feed the Void. For fragments, we will Void ability final blows cause targets to explode. So basically we throw our nade and the Vortex nade sucks everything in, and once it kills things, it kind of explodes. So if things are around it that don't get sucked in, it just does a lot of damage. Our lingering grenade effects, so for our instance, the Vortex Grenade will have a longer duration, so it'll sit on the floor longer and deal more damage. Your Void Grenades weaken targets. This allows them to basically be critable everywhere, so it does like the yellow crit damage. It kind of weakens them, suppresses them for a small amount of time that the grenade is up. All right, so for the mods, again, you feel free to just take a picture if you don't want to hear my dumbass talk the whole time. But essentially, it's pretty similar to the solar build, but we're going to be running double ashes to assets to get our Nova Bomb back really, really quickly, because we will constantly have our grenade up. Void and Strand Siphon, again, just to synergize with our weapons, constantly creating orbs of power. Grenade Kickstart to get our grenade back even faster, because sometimes with the Controverse Hold, you can either miss, an enemy can either strafe or teleport away, so this allows you to get grenade energy back even if you don't hit a target pretty quickly. And obviously firepower, because we will be constantly spamming our grenades, so our grenade final blows will create orbs of power to synergize into our build. Charged up, so we increase the maximum number of stacks of our armor charges by 1. Again here, this is basically going to be the thing for most of my builds. I don't have anything slotted here in the chest plate because it changes per activity and they are bugged. And then for the boots, we have stacks on stacks. Picking up an overpower grants us an additional armor charge. And innervation, double innervation, which reduces our grenade cooldown each time we pick up an overpower. Basically, this build allows us to have our grenade up all the time, no matter what. And then on our class items, we have 3 bombers, which reduces grenade cooldown when using your class ability. You can obviously switch this up too. I just like it because, again, it allows me to just basically have my nade up. I have so many different ways to get my grenade up. If I mess it up, just throw an absolute limp dick throw or miss, again, target strafes, whatever. This basically gives me a lot of options to constantly have my grenade up. All right, now it's time to talk about Strand. Yes, we all thought Strand was going to be dog shit, but Bungie absolutely whipped out their 12-inch dong and blew all of our backs out because Strand is absolutely amazing. I didn't like it in the campaign, but I do enjoy it now that we have all the fragments unlocked. So what we're going to be using is, the main thing here is the shackle grenade, which will allow us to suspend a target by throwing it, or we can consume it as well with the aspect here. Mind Spun Invocation, probably butchered that. I'm illiterate as fuck, but anyway, so that will be something we will use in the build as well. And then Weaver's Call. The fragments we will be using is Thread of Evolution, which threadlings travel further and deal additional damage. As far as I understand, from what I've seen, is the threadlings usually do, I think it is 11,000 damage. With this fragment on, they do close to 15. And in this build, we'll be spawning 3 of them. So that's about 45,000 damage just with the threadlings alone. So very, very good. Thread of Generation, dealing damage, generates grenade energy. This will be really good with our build because we're just constantly going to be throwing and or consuming our grenade. The Thread of Warding, so picking up an overpower grants Woven Mail. And Woven Mail is very good. If you didn't know, Woven Mail is your body is encased in a protective mesh of tightly woven strand matter, greatly reducing incoming non-precision damage. Now basically, it will keep you alive if you're shit. Thread of Mind is defeating suspended targets, grants ability energy. Again, very good to synergize with our build. For mods, we are going to be using the new Strand exotic Swarmers. But for the helmet, we are going to be using Powerful Friends. So collecting an overpower causes nearby allies to also increase their armor charge by 1. The reason we're using this is because it doesn't seem like Ashes to Assets really works very well with the grenade, since we're suspending targets or we're consuming it. So feel free to use, like, if you have space in there. My stats are dog shit. I barely got 100 resilience, but feel free, instead of Ashes to Assets, to use like a ammo finder mod. But Strand Siphon and Void Siphon, again, This build is better with the Strand weapon if you have a hatchling roll on any of the weapons, which I do not have, but the hatchling roll will do very good damage, and obviously you will be creating orbs of power with Strand weapons, and you pair that with the artifact mod Allied Unraveling, which grants you unraveling rounds, which is basically like the volatile rounds for Strand. So also very good synergy there. For the gauntlets, we are going to begin using grenade kickstart to constantly have our grenade up, and firepower. So grenade, final blows, create orbs of power. Now, oddly enough, this one does seem to work over ashes to assets. Doesn't necessarily mean that ashes to assets won't work. I just didn't see enough return on my super to use it. I mean, obviously I have it here, but again, my stats are bad. So our grenade final blows will create orbs of power. So basically it seems like when we consume our grenade and stuff and we suspend certain targets, they do seem to spawn a orb of power. So that is why I'm using that. Very good. Obviously keep our armor charges up to synergize with our build and firepower or grenade kickstart. Charged up again. Stacks on stacks. And double innervation to reduce grenade cooldown each time we pick up an orb of power. For our class item, we have double bomber, so increase grenade cooldown when using our class ability, and we will be using our class ability a lot in this build because it spawns the threadlings, which I already said deals 45,000 damage roughly, which is just an insane number. And then utility kickstart. All right, next up we have the Stasis Warlock build. I probably won't be using this build too much in the raid. This build is mainly all for ad control. So basically with this build doesn't really matter what we have here, because especially with the grenade, because we will be consuming the grenade with the aspect Bleak Watcher and turning it into a stasis turret to slow and freeze everything. Again, this is all crowd control, ad control. So we'll see if I end up using it in the raid if we need to, but it is a very good build. The other aspect we were using are Ice Flare Bolts. So basically shattering a frozen target spawns seekers that track and freeze other nearby enemies. The Whisper of Torment. So our grenade energy, each time you take damage, you will gain grenade energy. The Whisper of Shards, so shattering a stasis crystal temporarily boosts your grenade recharge rate. Shattering additional stasis crystals increases the duration of this benefit. I think I might be mainly using that for the resilience, but it also isn't that bad of a fragment to use. While you are near a frozen target or a friendly stasis crystal, you take reduced damage from targets. That is the Whisper of Chains. And lastly, we have increase the damage and size of bursts of stasis when you destroy a stasis crystal or defeat a frozen target in the Whisper of Fissures. For the mods, the helmet we'll be using is Eye of Another World. That's the exotic. It marks priority targets and buffs ability regen. So it allows us to basically get our stasis turret back up a lot quicker. That paired with the grenade kickstart mods. But on the Eye of Another World, we will be using again Void and Strand Siphon for the volatile rounds on our funnel web, by creating orbs of power by using a void weapon. I'm using Radiant Light, so casting your super causes nearby allies to also increase their current armor charge by 1. We will be getting our super pretty quickly in this build. Just because you're basically freezing all ads and just killing a whole bunch of things. And then I just have a kinetic siphon. You can use whatever you want really here. So that one's really interchangeable. But triple grenade kickstart. Now again, this will help me make sure I get my turret up basically at all costs. Because the stasis turret is the main part of this build. to control ads because it will literally shoot and freeze absolutely everything, give you time to kill them, regen, whatever you may need. Again, charged up, so increases our armor charge stack by 1. Stacks on stacks, picking up an overpower grants you 1 additional stack of armor charge. So every time we pick up an orb, we will get more armor charges to help with our firepower or grenade kickstart. And innervation, we'll use 2 of those to reduce grenade cooldown each time we pick up an orb. Again, basically just making sure we constantly have our stasis turret available. For the class item, we're just using distribution. It reduces all ability cooldowns when using your class ability near targets. Since everything's frozen, you will basically constantly get this energy because you could run up to them or whatever you may need and throw down your rift. So this is very good to use. You can also use possibly a time dilation mod, but utility kickstart will probably be a good one to use as well. Or you can just use double distribution, which I guess I will put on for the time being. All right, next we will be moving on to the hunter. This will probably be the main hunter build in terms of day 1 for damage. The Strand one will probably also be one because the Strand super does very good damage, but we will get into that one later. But this build's been around for a while. It is the Star Eater Scales and Blade Barrage build. So essentially picking up Orbs of Power will overcharge your super, and I believe this can go up to 4 stacks. 4 or 5 stacks to overcharge your super to deal more damage. And the main things here for the subclass abilities and stuff is Solar Grenade. Usually people use Healing Grenade, but with the new fragment that came out in Lightfall, Solar Grenade Final Blows heal you. You can use any grenade. I know this is called a Solar Grenade, but they really need to change that. So I'm just using Solar Grenade, but feel free to use any grenade, and it will basically heal you on Final Blow kills. For the aspects, we're using Knock 'em Down and On Your Mark. For the fragments, we're going to be using powered melee attacks against combatants, make you and nearby allies radiant. For Ember of Torches, we'll be spamming our melee a lot with Knife Trick. You get it back really quickly, and I'm pretty sure if you get a precision kill with it, or just a kill in general, you will get it back. Again, I don't really play Hunter too much, so bear with me on this. Ember of Empyrean. So solar weapon or ability final blows extend the duration of restoration and radiant, which if you didn't know, restoration, you regenerate health and shields over time and cannot be interrupted by taking damage. Restoration is very good. As well as radiant, your weapons are enhanced by the power of the traveler and deal increased damage to combatants. I believe radiant is a 50% damage buff to your weapons, so radiant is very good, so we want to increase the duration of those two. Ember of Solace, radiant and restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. Again, obviously to keep those up as long as possible because they are both very good. Ember of Resolve, as I already showed, but Solar Grenade Final Blows cure you. We'll be spamming our grenade every time we have it just to have some survivability. And Ember of Wonder, which rapidly defeating multiple targets with solar ignitions generates an orb of power. I mainly have this for the resilience, so feel free to use any mod or fragment you want to use there instead. All right, for the mods, we are going to be using on the helmet, we are going to be using Ashes to Assets, since we'll be throwing a grenade for amount of time, as well as hands-on, so we gain bonus super energy by throwing grenades, as well as getting melee kills, because I said we will be spamming the Knife Trick melee constantly. Solar and Strand Siphon, feel free to use any siphon really you want here, but since the buffs of Radiant and Restoration, stuff like that, I want to use Solar here, because my Solar weapons will help me out with those, getting those buffs and things like that. Grenade Kickstart to get our grenade back faster. heavy-handed, so our powered melee final blows will create orbs of power, as well as firepower. So our grenades final blows will also create orbs of power. We'll be using charged up. Again, feel free to put in any mods here, whether it be a reserve mod or resist mod. Again, I just don't have them in because it changes per activity. Stacks on stacks and absolution, so we reduce all ability cooldowns each time we pick up an overpower. For our class item, we'll be using utility kickstart, bomber to reduce grenade cooldown when using your class ability, and distribution to reduce all ability cooldowns when using your class ability near targets. All right, here we are on the Strand Hunter build. Star Eaters again, just to increase and overcharge our super. This is doing unbelievable damage with Silk Strike. It is quite insane. So you'll be using that for this build. For a grenade, you definitely can use grapple if you enjoy using grapple, but on this build I like to use this grenade, the threadling grenade, which a woven projectile that reweaves itself into threadlings when in flight. So I kind of like to throw the grenade over kind of in the air, and it will push out 3 threadlings that will track and do damage to targets. It is very good. For aspects, there's only 2, but Widow Silk and Snaring Slam. For the fragments, we are using a Thread of Warding, so picking up an overpower grants Woven Mail. Thread of Evolution, threadlings travel faster and deal additional damage. I mentioned earlier that this allows the threadlings to do around 45,000 damage in total between all 3 of them. Thread of Binding, so super final blows emit a suspending burst from the target. I mainly am using that for the resilience, but it also is very good if you're not doing boss damage. You're just using this for ad clear. And Thread of Generation, which dealing damage grants grenade energy. For the mods, we are going to be using, I'm sure you're shocked here, but Ashes to Assets, we're going to be using 2 of those, and whatever siphon mod you prefer. Grenade Kickstart, 2 of those, again, to get our grenade up. You can kind of see the trend here. With the recent changes to the ability uptimes, all of our stuff is going to be based on abilities, essentially. I mean, that's how we become absolute warlords in the game. And then firepower, so grenade final blows generate orbs of power. We're using double charged up here to get a lot more armor charges than usual. You don't really have to, but I prefer to do it in this build. So feel free to change that into any resist and or loader mod if you prefer that. Stacks on stacks again. And kinetic weapon surge. Feel free to use any weapon surge you want here. I kind of just threw on kinetic just because. Double time dilation, so our decaying armor charges have a longer duration. This will be good for any weapon surge you want to use. You will just have more damage with whichever one you are using. So my kinetic weapons will do a lot more damage, and we're using 2 of them, so it increases the timer because these do stack. And then obviously, yet again, bomber, so reducing grenade cooldown when using our class ability. And on Hunter, we will be using our class ability a lot. For Void Hunter, there are quite a few builds you can use. I prefer to use this build the most out of any. It's the best for survivability in my opinion, just because you will have constant invis. I solo GMs, so this is what I use to do that. I use Marksman's Dodge. You can use Gambler's Dodge, but with this build, you will be getting your melee back super quick, so I don't really think I need it. I'd rather have my weapons reloaded just in case. Certainly, you can use any grenade. I just prefer Vortex. For the aspects, we are using Trapper's Ambush and Vanishing Step, so we can go invisible while dodging. For the fragments, we are using Echo of Dilation, where while crouched, you sneak faster and gain enhanced radar resolution. I'm pretty sure I'm just using this mainly for the mobility so I can get my class ability back faster, so I can have that constant invis pool going. So feel free to use whatever you want there. Echo of Remnants, so my lingering grenade effects, like my Vortex grenade, will have an increased duration. And Echo of Persistence, which void buffs applied to you, so invisibility in my case, have increased duration. Again, just synergy allowing me to keep my invis constantly. So the main thing I want to talk about here is Graviton Forfeit. It improves invisibility, but when you are invisible, like you use your specifically your melee ability, when you are invisible and surrounded by enemies, you gain that melee energy back quicker. So I paired that with going invis while dodging, and basically I will always have one of those things at one point. So I can be invis for 30 minutes if I wanted to. So this is why I prefer this build for survivability purposes. Double ashes to assets. I mean, it's pretty common at this point. Just get my tether back as fast as possible. I just have a heavy ammo finder. Feel free to put whatever you want there. For this class specifically, I am using Font of Focus, so I gain a bonus to discipline while I have an armor charge. This is because my discipline on my hunter isn't very good. It's 46, so I like to try and increase the discipline as much as I can. Grenade kickstart, getting my grenade back when it's fully expended. And firepower, so my grenade final blows create orbs of power. Charged up yet again, increasing the maximum number of stacks of armor charge by 1. Any resist mods you want. Stacks on stacks, so I pick up picking up more power grants me an additional armor charge. And just using weapon surge, so feel free to use whatever weapon surge you want with your weapon loadout. I'm just using void weapon surge for my funnel web and those volatile rounds. So for the class item, we're using utility kickstart, so we get all of our, or a good portion of ability energy back for our class ability, because that is my slower regen rate, so I like to have that one come back as fast as possible, so that doesn't really mess up my constant invis rhythm. And of course, yet again, double bomber. All right, now last but not least is the Solar Titan. This will be probably a build a lot of people are going to be using. It's the Synthosteps Tiny Hammer Spam. Synthosteps obviously buffs melee damage when surrounded by enemies, and since you will be bonking things with your hammer, you will constantly be surrounded by enemies. So feel free to use any barricade you want. I like to use rally just so I could do damage and whatever else, but obviously we need throwing hammer. I'm also going to be using the new firebolt grenades because they are the Rain of Firebolts mod and the Flare Up mod from the seasonal artifact allow firebolt grenades to do a lot of damage, as well as you get 2 of them, so it's very good. So I'll be using firebolts for that. Obviously Roaring Flames, so we buff our solar abilities as we get solar ability kills, so we will do more damage with our bonk hammer. And Soul Invictus to create sunspots. Ember of Torches, so our powered melee attacks against combatants make us and nearby allies radiant. It's obviously very good. I already explained radiant a little bit in the hunter, but essentially radiant is like a 50% damage buff, so it is very good to have. Ember of Ashes, I apply more scorch stacks to targets. Ember of Searing, so defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite, so if I miss my hammer, being a dogshit gamer, this allows me to get my hammer back a little bit faster. And my Solar Ignitions spread Scorch to affected targets. An Ember of Char. So for the mods, again, Ashes to Assets, 2 of those to get our super really fast, because the super will be very good for ad clear, especially in the day 1 raid. Hands-on, so we gain bonus super energy on melee kills. We will be bonking everything, so we will be getting a lot of melee kills. We're using Impact Induction, so causing damage with a melee attack reduces our grenade cooldown, just to have those firebolt grenades up pretty much most of the time. Our grenade final blows create Orbs of Power, so we're using firepower. Heavy-handed, our powered melee final blows create orbs of power. Again, just bonking everything. We're gonna have orbs upon orbs. Charged up to increase the amount of armor charges we can carry. You can use any surge mod here. Doesn't really matter. Choose one to your liking. Using Arc Scavenger just for damage, whatever else, my hothead. So feel free to change that as well. 1-2 finisher, so finishers restore my melee abilities. Again, if I'm a shit gamer, like the cran-eating titan that I am, I need my bonk hammer. So I will get my melee ability back on a finisher. Time dilation to increase the amount of armor charge decay, so I can do more damage with my surge mods. And outreach to reduce melee cooldown when using your class ability. Again, just to keep my hammer up at all points if I miss a throw. All right, for the Titan Strand build, we are going to be using the new Strand exotic boots, Avian Leap. It improves our Drenger's Lash, probably butchered that. Gain Woven Mail when suspending targets, and this build is going to be all about suspending absolutely everything. Now we're going to be using a Rally Barricade just so we can shoot the suspended targets versus Towering Barricade where we really can't. We're going to be using the Shackle Grenade, the Into the Fray, and Drenger's Lash. Again, still don't know if I said that right. We're going to be using Thread of Mind, where defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy, because basically when we use our barricade, which is our class ability, it's going to launch out some threadlings that suspend stuff, so we want to have our class ability up as quickly as possible. We're going to be using Thread of Ascent. Activating your grenade ability reloads your quick weapons and grants bonus airborne effectiveness that nobody gives a shit about, and handling for a short duration. We're going to be using Thread of Continuity. Jesus Christ. Suspend, unravel, and sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. And lastly, we're going to be using Thread of Wisdom, which defeating suspended targets with precision final blows creates an orb of power. For the mods, we are going to be using Ashes to Assets, Heavy Ammo Finder. Again, this one's interchangeable. And Strand Siphon, preferably if you have a Strand weapon, probably the SMG with the Hatchling. I don't, but probably use a Strand Siphon, or feel free to use any siphon that you want there. Double Grenade Kickstart and Firepower. For our chests, we have Charged Up, any resist or reserve mods you'd like, Stacks on Stacks, Intervention, this is not Call of Duty, Innervation, and Insulation, so we can reduce our class ability cooldown each time we pick up an Orb of Power to keep that synergy with the suspending aspect of our on our class ability. Utility Kickstart, to gain bonus class ability energy when we use our class ability. And Distribution reduces all ability cooldowns when using your class ability near targets. We're going to be suspending everything, so we're going to be in constant proximity to enemies. And a Bomber to reduce grenade cooldown when using our class ability. Again, since we will just be spamming that class ability to suspend things, it's a lot of good synergy here. On to the Void Titan now. We are still going to be using Heart of Inmost Light. I realized that it got nerfed. Essentially, our class ability now comes up only 25% as fast versus 150% what it used to be. So it's nerfing our Heart of Inmost Light pretty well. But with this build, it'll kind of feel like the old Heart of Inmost Light. Still a little bit feels like it got nerfed, but essentially getting the abilities back is really no problem with this build. So obviously, Bubble Titan. I use Rally Barricade just so I can shoot stuff, stun champions, whatever I may need. We're using Shield Throw so we can get that extra buff from hitting something with our shield, which buffs our grenade, which buffs our class ability. That's how Heart of Inmost works. It's just basically ability synergy by using the other two or one or two abilities. Vortex Grenade, use any grenade. I just prefer Vortex Grenade. And a Bastion, this is why I use Rally Barricade, because casting my Barricade grants me an overshield, so I can still shoot if I ADS, and I'll have my overshield up basically most of the time. Controlled Demolition, so I will make pretty much everything volatile, which is very good. Volatile is amazing. I'm using the new Echo of Cessation. Finisher final blows create a burst of void damage that cause nearby combatants to become volatile. This is very good on things like champions or, you know, minors, majors, whatever. And then picking up a Void Breach or an Orb of Power grants Devour. Devour is very good. If you don't know what Devour is, essentially Devour is a survivability thing. So once you have Devour, if you get a kill, the Devour refreshes and Devour heals you. So your timer will refresh upon kills. Very good. And Echo of Remnants, where our lingering grenade effects have increased duration. Now for the build, as I already explained, Heart of Inmost Light, just keeping those abilities up at all costs. We're going to be using a Void Siphon mod here, just to use with our funnel web. Again, mentioned it many times, to get those volatile rounds, to get those orbs of power. Double Ashes to assets, double grenade kickstart to get our grenade energy back when we use our grenade. Firepower, so our grenade final blows will create orbs of power. Double charged up to increase our armor charges, so we have more of those to help with the synergy and getting those abilities back faster to make Heart of Inmost Light feel good. Stacks on stacks. Insulation, so we reduce class ability cooldown each time we pick up an Orb of Power. We're using 2 of those. Double utility kickstart. This is good because the main nerf to Heart of Inmost was the class ability regen. So with utility kickstart, when your class ability energy is fully expanded, you gain class ability energy. So we are using 2 of those to get that back and keep the ability spam going. And lastly, Outreach, so reduces melee cooldown when you're using your class ability. Now on to Arc Titan. This build is going to be very similar to the Void one, just Heart of Inmost Light, spamming storm grenades. Still a very good build. Again, this allows us to have Heart of Inmost Light feel somewhat decent, sort of close to its original form, but we're going to be using Thunder Crash. I like to use Thruster here, just because it's a lot faster than putting down a barricade, but feel free to use a barricade if you like. Obviously, storm grenades, and I'm using just a shoulder charge ability. You can definitely use Thunderclap as well, but I wouldn't use Ballistic Slam, especially in high-end content. You'll just get absolutely destroyed. So these 2 are interchangeable. Use what you like. For the aspects, we're going to be using Touch of Thunder and Knockout. Fragments, we're going to be using Spark of Ions, so defeating a jolted target creates an Ionic Trace, which Ionic Traces allow us to get our abilities back faster. We gain a pretty good amount of ability energy. Spark of Resistance, so surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. Spark of Magnitude, so our lingering arc grenades have an extended duration. This is good for storm grenades, especially with the new recent nerfs to them as well. Spark of Shock, so our arc grenades jolt targets. This is very good because jolting is essentially a debuff, as well as now jolting does stun overload champions. It is very good. I would not change this mod or this fragment in any means necessary. Jolt, very good. All right, for the mods, again, it's basically going to be exactly the same as the Void build, so I'm not going to go too in depth of it, but double Ashes to assets, double grenade kickstart, firepower, double charged up, stacks on stacks, double insulation, double utility kickstart, and outreach, and just to keep those abilities up, boys. So to conclude this video, I absolutely believe that these are the builds that you have to be using in Destiny right now. They're the most OP builds. They make you an absolute menace out there. Really helps you get through basically any activity in the game. I hope you found the video helpful. I know it was a long one, but whether you're a returning player or a player that hasn't played in a couple years, I hope these builds really help you. My day one raiders, hope this video helped you as well. I know I'm going to be using a lot of these builds in my day one attempt. So that's it for me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.